I am delighted to bring you yet another fabulous interview, this time with Holly from The Grounded Body. You can find her on Instagram, like I found her a couple of months ago. Her information is astounding and will break up any myths that you might have in your head, like I did, around what we can and can't eat with lipedema, which is huge, right? Holly is a certified holistic nutritionist and she is big in diving into the world of blood sugar and metabolic health. You can find all the details about her and what she has on offer being released today in the description box below. And without further ado, let's have a listen to the conversation. Holly, I am so thrilled to talk to you. We've been chatting away on Instagram in the background. And for those of you who don't know Holly, she is The Grounded Body on Instagram. And I came across her pages not that long ago, to be honest. But straight away, everything that you spoke about, I was like, my mind was doing somersaults because I was like, oh my goodness, that's me, that's me. And you so graciously decided to join me for a chat. So thank you. I very much appreciate you being here.
You're very welcome, and I'm so glad to be here, Kylie.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to start with if you could tell those that are listening how you came across lipedema, why you work in that space. What is it for you?
So I've always known that there was something off with my body, just in terms of shape. I bruised really easily. I had a lot of sensitivity and pain. And it wasn't until 2019 that I came across a video on YouTube of somebody who had lipedema. This particular individual had advanced lipedema, but everything that she was saying, I resonated with so much. And it's sort of what got me, sort of leaded me into starting to research it a little bit. And then eventually I went to see an MLD therapist. They weren't able to diagnose me, but based off of my appearance and giving me MLD, they definitely said that I was showing some signs. And then that was when I seeked out the help of a vascular surgeon who officially diagnosed me with stage 1 lipedema after not identifying any real problems with my veins in terms of the cause for my swelling. And then at that point in 2019, that's when I created my awareness account on Instagram and just started to share my journey and started to educate myself a bit more on the condition. And that was actually what led me to then go back to school for 3 years to study holistic nutrition because I wanted to be able to do more. I wanted to be able to help women on a deeper level to understand the mechanics of their body, why things work the way that they do, and to be able to address lipedema in a natural way, almost to be able to retrain the body to work the way that it was designed to. And so now I work with women who have lipedema, specifically addressing metabolic health, because this is a big piece to it. And I've absolutely loved the work that I've been doing so far. And I'm constantly educating myself on the condition and how we can better support ourselves, but also about the education. Because I think this is the most empowering thing for women is to understand the mechanics of the body, understand things like blood sugar, understand things like circulation, what's going on when it comes to lipedema. Because the more we know, the more likely we are to want to make those changes because we understand what's going on. We're not confused. We're not frustrated. We feel more empowered. And that
Or
was
in
essentially
control. Yep.
exactly.
You're from Canada, right?
Yes.
Just
Yes,
for other
Ontario.
people, yeah, just for other people listening. So that's how you get a diagnosis in Canada, is it seeing a vascular surgeon? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one
Okay.
of the options. Really, any medical professional, but you have to see somebody who is obviously knows about lipedema and is educated in lipedema.
Because I had a similar situation. It was an MLD practitioner that actually well, diagnose me. I've never had an official diagnosis because I haven't lived anywhere where it's been available to me, in
Yeah.
small country towns of Australia. But same thing. I sat down beside her. I went for, being a thyroid person, I went for fluid retention, and I was working on that at the time. And I sat down, and she said, "Oh, just lift your skirt for me." And I lifted my skirt, and she goes, "Oh, you're a lippy lady." And I was like, "I'm a what?" And I'm like, I
Oh,
had never heard of it. And this was long after I'd studied clinical nutrition and naturopathy. So I was like, it was no clue. So fascinating the way it's often the hands-on people that do the telling of this stuff.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. There really is not yet any way to diagnose except based off of appearance, really, and removing any other issues that could cause swelling. So, for instance, here we see a vascular surgeon because a lot of the times it could be our veins that are contributing to swelling. So, if there are any issues there, then if everything is clear, then that's typically where they give, but it's not. In my eyes, it's still not an official diagnosis. It's really just, okay, well, you don't have this issue, so it has to be this because again, lipedema is still so fresh. Not a lot of doctors are really aware. There's no specific diagnostic tool to diagnose a woman with lipedema, and it really is based off of appearance. But like I've noticed myself, I can visually see
Mm.
women just outside, whether or not somebody has lipedema or it's fat,
Yep.
because it's very, and you sort of, the more you dive into lipedema, if you have it yourself, it's funny, even my husband can point it out because he's learned so much just from me. So
Same.
I'll say
Same.
something and he'll be like, "Yeah, I noticed it too." And she's like, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
know."
We
And
were
so
walking the
even
streets
him,
of Bangkok a couple of days ago, and my husband was like, "Is that and I was like, "Yeah, well done."
yeah.
Because there's
So
a
it's
distinct difference. Yeah. Yeah.
very distinct. And you, in the beginning, you can't necessarily see it, but then after a while, you start to notice the characteristics. And there's very
Mm.
specific characteristics with women with lipedema versus somebody who might just be overweight and it's just related to fat.
What do you think is the biggest thing that lipedema women don't know or don't understand just as a whole? Is there something that you think is missing that, from what I've learned so far, and I come from a background of study clinical nutrition, naturopathy, and herbalism, yet I studied nothing about this in college for 4 years. So it's been what I guess, learned along the way. And the two big things I found is to straighten your hormones and lower inflammation, which ironically is the same things I need to do for the thyroid. From your perspective, what do you think is the biggest missing thing for women with lipedema?
Metabolic health.
Okay.
So this is a huge piece, and there is some early research that's showing there's a metabolic component to lipedema, and the idea that the lipedema fat is metabolically resistant. Okay, so we're talking about blood sugar imbalances, and this is one of the reasons why carbohydrates is such an issue, or we make it seem like it's an issue when in reality, carbohydrates are not the problem. It's the way the body is handling the carbohydrates because there's
Mm.
no direct research or anything to show that carbohydrates leads to progression of lipedema. There's really no. So essentially, we'll dive into this a little bit. So what happens is carbohydrates act as fuel and they turn into glucose. It goes into your bloodstream. Over time, if there's blood sugar imbalances, the insulin struggles to bring that glucose to the muscle, which is our intracellular tissue. So over time, that sugar starts to pull in fluid into the blood vessels, increasing volume and increasing pressure. Because of our weakened connective tissue, some of that plasma or that fluid starts to leak out into the extracellular tissue. This is where we start to see that swelling when we're eating carbohydrates. We naturally have blood sugar imbalances just because of the environment in which our body is in, the state that it's in. And so a lot of women don't even realize that they have blood sugar imbalances. You don't need to have, a condition like type 2 diabetes, for instance, to have those imbalances. And so, because of our weakened connective tissue, those blood vessels are more permeable. And so that fluid starts to leak into the extracellular tissue. And our lymphatic system is also slower than somebody without those connective tissue disorders. So, the job of the lymphatic system is to be able to clean up all of that fluid, push it back into the bloodstream. But again, if we're dealing with those blood sugar imbalances, we'll do MLD, we'll do dry brushing, we'll raise our legs up on the wall, we'll help to get that fluid back into the bloodstream, but there's already a high amount of volume and pressure because of the glucose. So it's sort of this vicious cycle where the lymphatic system tries to clean it up, but more fluid starts seeping out. So what we really need to be doing is addressing the blood sugar issue. We really need to retrain the body to utilize glucose and send it into the muscle. And it's about fluid redistribution. So instead of the fluid sitting in our extracellular tissue, where we start to see it in our legs, we start to see it in our arms, around our ankles, our knees, we're now distributing it into the muscle, into the intracellular tissue, and you start to see a change in your body. So for me, just over the last few weeks, I've been addressing my blood sugar issues. And I was eating carbohydrates a few months ago, but I was very sedentary. And so what happened was there was nothing moving that glucose into the intracellular tissue because I was sedentary. I wasn't exercising, I was sitting a lot. And so the fluid was building up into my bloodstream, that fluid was leaking out, and I was looking at my legs and they were twice the size, right? And I was like, what is going on? I blamed it on, you guessed it, the carbohydrates. Like
To be clear, the only way to get that fluid into the muscle, is through exercise and movement, right?
and through nutrition. So we want to
Okay.
make sure that we're balancing. So again, it's threefold. Nutrition, making sure that our meals are always balanced to support blood sugar. So pairing carbohydrates with your proteins, your fats, your fiber, right? Making sure that you have that balanced meal. And then movement. And the beauty of movement is even if blood sugar imbalances are there, when we contract our muscles, we produce what's called GLUT4 transporters, and those on its own actually help to remove glucose and send it off to the muscle before we address those blood sugar issues where insulin can start to pull that glucose into the muscle. So that's
Very
the
cool.
beautiful thing about movement. And it's not, and I always tell people it's not about, we don't have to, because there's two types of movement. And tell me to stop if I'm, going too far
No,
into it.
no.
There's two forms of movement we want to be doing, cardio and of course strength training,
Yep.
because muscle is our storage for glucose. So once we start to hit age 35, every year we start declining in muscle mass. So this is why, the big trend of protein, everything is protein. We're putting protein in everything. There is an importance to it, right? We want to be able to maintain muscle and we want to support increasing muscle. So we want to make sure we're getting protein in our meals. And then we want to make sure we're strength training to help build muscle mass so that we increase storage for glucose to go into. Because it's not just about being sedentary, it can also be a lack of muscle mass. Because if there's no storage, the glucose just sits in the bloodstream and eventually it's sent for fat storage. And that's where we start to increase our weight in terms of fat tissue because the glucose has nowhere else to go. So increasing muscle mass is important. And we do that through strength training and we do that through getting enough protein in all of our meals.
That's amazing. And I've got my own story to share here in so
Yep.
much as since we moved to Bangkok, so I was following keto, probably more carnivore, so ketovore, but high carnivore most of the time back in Australia.
Yep.
I walked every day for 3 to 5 kilometers. That was about it. The rest of the time, it was quite sedentary, working all the time, that kind of thing. Since we've moved to Bangkok, I've been doing anywhere from 10 to 15,000 steps most days, if not more. Plus, I'm doing a exercise bike challenge at the moment in the condo gym. So I'm riding the bike for 30 minutes a day for 30 days to see what difference that's made. Plus, I've added some weights to the upper arms. Um, and what I noticed was that suddenly I can have whatever I kind of like. We're sort of eating, and let's face it, over here, all the food is fresh every day, which is next level. You know, even the food carts and that kind of thing, it's made that morning when they sell out. That's it, it's done. And then they make the fresh lot the next day. So everything is fresh, and the fruits and veggies are amazing. Um, and I've just kind of let myself, as a way of settling in, just have, don't worry about the carnivore, don't worry about, because getting beef here is very expensive, and I was living off beef in Australia.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, just don't worry about that. Just let yourself do what you need to do, and just watch things, because we brought our scales with us, so I'm the same set of scales, so I track the way I always track. And what's been really weird is, after we've been here just on 4 weeks now, nothing's changed. My weight's, in fact, about a kilo or two less. My measurements are the same. I haven't measured myself since the start of my challenge, but my legs are already looking slimmer. And that's when I started to go, oh, can I potentially get away with eating a balanced diet again? Whereas I thought carnivore was going to have to be my life for the rest of my life. And now suddenly, and I've had rice, I've had sticky rice and mango, I've had all kinds of things that I normally would not touch, and nothing's really changing. I feel really good. So, what you're explaining to me kind of gives me an answer as to why this is happening. I'm just doing an enormous amount of exercise, which will probably continue for me. Um, Given that we don't have a car, you walk everywhere, that kind of thing. So do you feel, with what the knowledge that you have, as long as I keep up this amount of exercise and the training, that I should be good to eat all fresh foods?
Yeah. So, and this is the thing too. The reason why keto and carnivore, and now more recently GLP-1s, are affecting women with lipedema so positively is because the common denominator between those two is that they're addressing blood sugar. So, again, when you do a ketogenic diet and a carnivore diet, especially, what you're essentially doing is you're removing all the glucose from your body. So, we see a natural massive drop in weight because we store water with glucose, around 3 to 4 grams of water with our glycogen stores. So, when we go on a ketogenic diet, we wash all of that away. So we lose a massive amount of weight in the beginning, which is all fluid. And when there's no glucose in the bloodstream, we're not increasing that pressure, we're not increasing that volume. So it's relaxing the blood vessels. There's no fluid now to really leak into that extracellular tissue. But what happens is when we bring carbohydrates back into the diet, and we haven't really addressed blood sugar or essentially retrained our body to be able to utilize glucose, that weight can come back, especially if, again, you're sedentary, you have low muscle mass, right? Women tend to revert. They go back and they blame the carbohydrates because they're like, okay, I brought the carbohydrates back in, but look, all my swelling came back, all of my weight came back. And that was me for years and years and years, from 2019 until really 6 months ago, maybe. I thought keto was the way for me because my legs were so thin. And I was able to eat some carbohydrates, but then I could only do it for a little bit, and then the weight would come back, especially again if I was not moving my body. So that's why it's not just one thing that solves it. It's essentially a combination of things. So we focus on nutrition, making sure that those meals, because we don't want to be eating carbohydrates on their own, because we're always going to have spikes, but we want to keep them,
As level as
essentially.
possible.
Exactly, right? And so we want to make sure the nutrition is there. And then cardio, the beautiful thing about cardio is that it pulls the glucose immediately. It'll first address any glucose that's in the blood. So any glucose that might be sitting in the blood, it's going to take that while you're exercising. And with cardio, you really want to make sure that you're in zones 2 and 3. So you're out of breath, you can speak a few sentences. It's not like you can't talk at all, but your heart rate is increased. We want to increase the heart rate. So we don't want to be walking at a slow pace. We want to walk at, a good moderate pace, getting that heart rate up so that the body can utilize glucose. And when we do this consistently, we're teaching the body how to handle glucose. We want to get it out of the bloodstream and we want it in the muscle. And the beautiful thing about the glycogen and the water going into the muscle is that sometimes we may not see a huge shift in weight because the amount of fluid in the body is still the same. It's just being redistributed, right? So now it's not in the extracellular tissue where we see it in swelling, it's in the muscle. And that can also help to give more definition and even tone to the muscle because we're
Mm.
building out the muscle with that glycogen and that water. And sometimes that can even offset the lipedema tissue a little bit and help us to get, instead of the muscle looking kind of flat, when we sort of remove the glycogen and the water from the tissue.
Is there any advantage to when you like? There's a lady, a French lady, Jessie something, the glucose goddess, and she recommends either exercising after meals for that very reason, getting the glucose, blunting the spike, or even doing calf raises after you've eaten for that same
Yeah, so
reason.
you can, and I say 10 minutes after you eat meals. I always recommend clients because initially we don't want to sit down. It just helps the body take that glucose. So again, 10-minute walk around the block. Just don't immediately sit or lay down after a meal. And again, it's with consistency because over time we really start to address those imbalances and the body gets even better at pulling that glucose out. So just a little bit of movement. You don't even have to go outside. Walking around your house, doing some errands, going up and down the stairs, if you're throwing laundry in, just something to help the body utilize and use. Because again, carbohydrates, it's fuel. It's fueling our movement. So if we're
Mm.
not pairing it with movement, it's not essentially being utilized. Because when we look at the macronutrients, carbohydrates aren't essential. We can actually make glucose through protein and fat. We need protein, we need fatty acids. But carbohydrates comes with amazing benefits. It's typically the highest in fiber. It comes with many micronutrients and it's a great source of energy for our muscles. But this is where the movement piece really comes into play. And it was actually funny because a few years ago, I was rebounding and I was a rebounding junkie. I was on that thing 30 minutes every day with my electric dance music, and I was
Yeah.
just every single day. I loved it. And I remember because I post everything on my Instagram stories. So I go back in my archives to see, and that's actually helped me to make these connections over time. And I remember there was one week where I had posted and I had said I was eating so many things with carbohydrates. I was going to A&W, which is like a burger place here. I was having cupcakes. I went out for sushi. And I thought, wow, like my body just was responding really well to it. And I was keto at the time, but I thought it had to do with the lymphatic aspect of rebounding. But now
Mm.
looking back, I realized no, it was the cardio. Your body was pulling that glucose and it was utilizing it.
Yeah.
That's why your body was able to bounce back. And so instead of seeing the fluid in my legs, I just saw what people without lipedema see, which was just bloating in the stomach. When you eat
Yeah.
heavier meals, when you eat foods higher in sodium, you're going to experience more water retention in the stomach and just that bloating feeling. And essentially the weight is from that because as women, our weight fluctuates for many different reasons, right? That's
Yeah.
not lipedema specific. And so looking back, I thought, oh, you know what? That was because of the cardio. I was doing 30 minutes of cardio every day. I was increasing that heart rate, and my body was getting really good at utilizing glucose. So it wasn't the lymphatic part, was it? But I was at that time, I was really stressing the lymphatic part of rebounding and not so much the blood sugar issue.
Mm.
So now I've been eating carbohydrates almost every day
And when
for
you say carbohydrates, what are they for you?
so sweet potatoes, rice, high starch vegetables, bananas, um, popcorn. We cook it on the stove with coconut oil and some
Yep.
sea salt. Um, so those things, quinoa, beans. They're my favorite because that was the biggest issue with keto for me when I was on it was constipation was a huge issue. But then we're giving 1,001 ways to address it. But really for me it was the fiber. It was really hard for me to get enough fiber and I was dealing with constipation quite a bit. And again, for me it was really hard to sustain. I'm not saying anything bad about that way of eating because I always encourage women to do what works the best for you and what you find sustainable, right? As a nutritionist, I don't, there isn't one way of eating that I recommend for every single
I
woman.
totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we work together. If keto
Yeah.
works for you and you can sustain it, amazing. Because
Mm.
essentially it is indirectly addressing blood sugar because it's getting rid of the blood sugar. There's no
Yeah.
glucose, right? So, and the same thing with GLP-1s now as well, is that it's addressing the blood sugar issue. Because our body naturally produces GLP-1, but again, there's so many things that can lead to a lower production of it. And that's, again, when we deal with blood sugar imbalances, when we're dealing with stress, when we're dealing with poor sleep, there's so many things that can lower the production of that. So when women go on that medication, they see a reduction in inflammation. They see an increase in inflammation. They see the fluid retention going down because we're addressing blood sugar. So
Mm.
metabolic health, I think, is going to be, and again, I'm not a doctor. This is based off of, again,
Yep.
research that I
Yep.
have read myself and just what I've noticed in my own experience. But I think metabolic health is going to be a huge topic in the upcoming years in the lipedema space.
Mm.
So I'm
Have
just,
you watched a lot of Ben Bickman, Dr. Ben
yes,
Bick? His stuff is so easy to understand. I love his work. But that was when I started to really understand uh, the diet, or more the blood sugar aspect of it. But I didn't realize that exercise could have such a profound effect. And I've
oh,
never been an exercise person because I've had lipedema, I'm 54. I've had lipedema since all my life, but it really kind of kicked in at when my thyroid kicked it at 21. That was when I put on 50 kilos within the year. So,
yeah,
yeah. But so the exercise component, it's really blowing me away as to how much I can not get away with, because what was sustainable for me in Australia was carnivore and keto. Very sustainable. It was easy. It suited my lifestyle. I
yeah.
didn't have to think. Here, it's not sustainable because of the cost of beef here.
Hmm.
And I don't think I could get the same nutrients just eating chicken and eggs, even though I'm eating a lot of that. So for me, what's sustainable here is eating what's local and what the people in the food carts are making. So that is what's sustainable for me. But I had this mind space of thinking, oh, this is going to make it worse. This is, and here I am, I'm lining up for surgeries here, which is already booked in for the next lot of surgeries. And I'm like, oh, I can't be eating this way. What am I going to do? But after watching your last few Instagram bits and bobs, I'm like, oh, hang on, now it's all making sense to me as to why. Um, so, for the average lipedema woman, how much exercise do you think is needed to counteract a one carb meal a day? Or, if they want to just eat normally, whatever normal is for anybody in particular? That's such a loaded question, I know, but
I know. And so here's the thing. When it comes to the movement aspect, you do not need to run 6 miles. You do not need to go into the gym and lift 500 pounds. And I think when it comes to lipedema, we know the fat is resistant. So in our head, especially as women, it's like, okay, I'm going to go harder. I'm going to,
mm,
work out
we're
every
going to
single
do
day.
it.
Yeah, because I'm gonna beat this beast. I'm gonna show it
Yep.
who's boss, and I'm gonna,
Yeah.
defeat
Yeah.
all odds. And that's our mindset as women, right? We kind of go all in or we want to go all in. And the reality is it's actually the opposite. So when it comes to cardio, we really want to get that heart rate up. So I know everybody doesn't have access to it. I use a fitness tracker, so I use an Aura ring, and it shows me if I'm in those zones, or you can kind of calculate your heart rate and where it needs to be. But essentially, we want our heart rate elevated. So this can look like anything, going on a brisk walk, but walking at a good moderate pace where you can feel, you're getting a little bit out of breath. It's getting a little bit harder to talk. We don't want to be going on a slow walk, but also keep in mind different women, different stages. Go a little bit where your normal was. Because somebody who's at a stage 1 versus somebody who is at a stage 3,
Yeah.
fitness is and movement is going to look different. So it's really just about increasing a little bit to what you were doing before. Okay. So I'm not going to say to everybody that you need to run, because not everybody is going to be able to do that. Some
Mm.
women are going to deal with joint pain. They're going to have to find other forms of fitness. Aerobic swimming is amazing. This can be incredibly beneficial. So doing an aerobics class in a swimming pool, because it's much more gentle on the joints, and it can really help to increase that heart rate. Rebounding. I found some really great videos on YouTube actually that I've been doing now, because I love doing it to music. That's my ADHD component. It kind of hits the dopamine. So that
Do
good beat.
you do you use the bungee or the spring rebounder?
Oh, the bungee, not the spring.
Okay, because I had the spring and then I forked out. It took me years. Like I ended up buying a Bellicon Rolls Royce version of
Yes, they're the best.
yeah. However, I found out recently, and it wasn't long after I started using the Bellicon, I'd say within a couple of years, that my knees, I got meniscal tears. I ended up having a double knee replacement in
Oh,
2020.
yeah.
Yeah, which obviously hypermobile joints, I didn't know. I was dancing on the rebounder. I know a couple of times where I literally tore meniscus as I
Yeah.
was bouncing. And I found out recently that if you've got the hypermobile joints, that they recommend the springs, not the bungee.
Oh, interesting. I actually haven't heard that.
Yeah, it
I
was
wonder if because the bounce is a little bit too soft, so almost that
the
can do you feeling
yeah,
it. Yeah, that's actually really
yeah.
interesting. You
And
need more
it
of like a
made
firmer bounce.
sense. Absolutely. It made sense to me because I'd been on a firm one for 20 something years, no problems. And within 5 years of having the Bellicon, which I
Hmm.
loved, I sold it for a really cheap price when we sold everything.
Oh,
um,
they got a good deal.
they got a great deal. But for my joints, it was not good for me personally. I definitely there's no rebounder in this condo gym, unfortunately, but I'm tempted to buy one and put one down there because I love them so much. I've used them all my
Yeah.
life. Yeah. So from that perspective. But yeah, anyway, I was just thought your perspective on the different springs, because everybody always asks. Um, yeah, but the company that developed it for NASA. I think they're called Cellicizer.
Yes.
They got particular springs, and that's where I read about the if you've got knee problems or hypermobile joints or anything like that, that the bungee you should not be using.
Yeah, that's so
Mm.
interesting. I've actually, see, the thing with me is I've had mine for a few years now and didn't experience any issues, but now I'm experiencing more issues in my back. And I thought it's because of how firm. So I was actually going to go to a more smaller one. It's actually why I took a break from the rebounder and have
Mm.
just done cardio workouts, like almost like dancing, steady state cardio workouts on YouTube. I've just found some videos and I've just been doing them at home, and they've been working for me. So again, it is really interesting, and that's the thing, you really have to sort of, it's trial and error. I hate to say it. And everybody, myself included, just wanted answers. When I saw somebody make huge improvements,
Yep.
I'm like, okay, everything, what did you do? I want to copy it
Yeah.
word for word.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it's not, it's so individualized in terms of what is going to work for you versus what's going to work for me. And it
Absolutely.
really is about trial and error. And even when it comes to fitness, it's we really just want to look at, okay, what workout can we do that we love that's going to increase our heart rate to help pull that glucose? And what kind of strength training can we do to help increase and even just maintain muscle? And it can be anything from doing Pilates to using your own body weight to starting with light weights, hand weights, wrist weights, and then moving up. For me, when I was in the gym and I started lifting really heavy, I actually noticed I started to become more swollen because it was putting a lot of pressure on my veins. They
Oh.
almost were vasodilating because of the pressure, because of the weight. When I initially started, I saw a great body composition, but the second I started to increase the weight load and I was getting into 300, leg presses and hip thrusts and all of this, I was swollen constantly. And I thought weight training wasn't for me. And it wasn't that weight training wasn't for me, it was the amount of weight was just too much for my system.
So were
And
you all right with more reps as opposed to higher weight?
yes, yes, lighter weights, higher reps work
Yeah,
better for me than the other way around. So
gotcha.
again, don't knock it just because you're starting to see swelling. You may just need to kind of scale back. And
And
this is
tweak
why
it.
exactly, it's not because again our bodies can be so sensitive and it really is about trial and error, and I strength training is so incredibly important for us, again, especially when it comes to those blood sugar imbalances, because we need that storage. So we need
Mm.
to either be maintaining muscle and slowly increasing our muscle mass, especially as we get older. But again, it can look different for so many people. You start off just with your body weight and then you
Mm.
move to lighter weights. And then you can work to, 12 pounds, 20 pounds, but we don't need to be lifting 500 unless you want to do that. But in that
And it
regard,
feels good.
exactly.
Okay, so do you have any rules that are any like I would love to, and I used to be really dogmatic. When I became a naturopath, clinical nutritionist, I was all about the plants. On my other platform, Thyroid School, I even ran plant-based challenges. So then for me to do a 360 and become carnivore was like quite insane to a lot of people. But
Yeah.
I've learnt this one thing, and that's not to become dogmatic about what you need at any given time, because I think that changes throughout your life and where you are and what you need. But do you have any rules that for yourself you absolutely do follow, like things that you don't touch when it comes to food for lipedema?
Okay. So some women can have sensitivities. So this can be the common ones is gluten and dairy. So for me, dairy is incredibly hard for me to avoid. So I'm not the poster child for this because I don't avoid it, even though I need to, because I have other conditions. So I also deal with psoriasis, and it's a very inflammatory condition. And I know that dairy exacerbates it. So dairy for me is one that I avoid. Gluten, I do because I've always had it just, but again, I this is a whole other conversation. My upbringing, I was born via C-section, I was bottle fed, I was on antibiotics. So right from the beginning, my digestive system really got a huge hit. And I think because of that, my microbiome just really could not handle gluten because even as a small child, I would get cramps eating gluten. So that's something I personally stay away from. But again, I don't recommend it as a whole. As a nutritionist, I truly believe that we need to support the individual where they're at, also
Mhm.
their environment. Like, look at what you said, where you are now versus where you were before, and just the eating
Chalk and
environment
cheese.
changed. Yeah, and it's important to eat the foods that are available to you where you live because that's what your body is going to be able to handle. Our environment
Mm.
plays a huge role in our nutrition as well. And so now those are really the two big ones. But now I've happily discovered that I can bring back healthy, complex carbohydrates like potatoes, sweet potatoes, high starch veg, quinoa, beans, etc. But the point I want to touch on and something that you said is, our as our lives shift, our nutritional needs and all of that changes as well. But not even in that sense. Our nutritional needs change on a day-to-day basis. And what I mean by this is when we look at, and this is again something that I help address, with women when we're working one-on-one, is each day our nutritional needs are going to vary. And this bases on our movement and whether or not we're having a high activity day or a low activity day. So for me, the way that my nutrition looks and how I sort of teach it to other women is when I'm doing a cardio workout. So I'm doing a more higher intensity activity and it's really revving my metabolism. So my body is now, after that workout, it's burning through calories like crazy because it's utilizing energy. I have an increase, my metabolism is improved, my insulin is ready to suck up that glucose. These are the days that I typically will eat higher carbohydrates. Then on my rest and recovery days, my body is not expending as much energy. So I don't need as much energy through nutrition as I would on a higher activity day.
Mhm.
So the types of food changes day to day. So for instance, today is a bit of a not a full rest day, but more of a recovery day for me, an active recovery. So I'll do Pilates, but I'll keep my carbohydrates moderately. I eat carbohydrates every day, but again, it depends on what my activity levels are going to look like. So if I know I'm going in and I'm going to be doing a high cardio workout for 45 minutes, that's a day where I need to fuel my body because my body is going to be looking for that energy through food, right? That's what calories are,
Mhm.
giving our body that energy. So that's going to look different day to day as well. And it's a beautiful thing because we start to become more intuitive with what our body needs. If we need to rest today and maybe we just go for a gentle walk, okay, so our food needs are going to be different that day. Our body's not going to be craving food as much because we're not expending all of that energy, right? When we work out, you might notice that you get hungrier. Of course,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
you need to fuel that workout. You need to fuel your body. You need to refuel those glucose stores in your muscle because you've utilized them. And that's okay. Then on your rest and recovery days, you may not feel as hungry, of course, because we're not expending as much energy that day. And those days typically will look more like a lower carb meal, not keto or anything like that, but just I won't eat as many carbohydrates because my body doesn't need that
Doesn't need
fuel.
it. Mm.
Exactly. And what this does over time with consistency is create that metabolic flexibility. So now our
Mm.
bodies are good at utilizing glucose and fat for fuel. And that's that beautiful, right?
Yeah.
That's what we want. It's that balance, right? And so, because again, glucose from carbohydrates, it's great for our brain health. It's great for fueling our energy. It comes in, great forms of fiber. And then fat can be incredibly great for our brain health as well. And so when we can kind of switch between the two, depending on what our bodies need, that's metabolic flexibility. That's essentially what we want to eventually get to. And we can do that based on, again, our energy needs are going to change every single day. So, as a holistic nutritionist, we don't focus on giving people a calorie or a macro, breakdown. And I'm going to tell
Yeah.
you, okay, you need 1600 calories today. But what I've sort of taught clients is that they can use the total daily expense. I can't remember now, it's off the tip of my
Yeah.
tongue, but they can use
TLBD or something.
calculate. It's the calculator that tells you what calories you need based on your movement, your age, your weight, and it gives you a general sort of guideline because we want to make sure that we're fueling our body enough, but it's not about tracking every little thing and counting every calorie, every fat, every protein because we want to have a balanced meal, but some days we're going to need more energy and then other days we're going to need less energy. And so it's really about that balance and again creating that metabolic flexibility.
Yeah. Oh no, I've definitely seen that at play for myself here,
Mhm.
which I didn't expect because some days, yeah, we're 17, 20,000 steps exploring and finding things and all the things that you do. And I do, I eat a lot on those days, a lot more than I normally would.
Yeah.
And then the other days that we're just sort of settling down or it's pouring with rain because it's rainy season here, then yeah, I'm finding myself, oh, suddenly I can get till midday without eating. Whereas at home in Australia, I was having eggs for breakfast without fail. I was having 3 meals a day without fail. But I wonder how much of that was habit, to be honest. I got into this
Yeah.
habit. And was I really tuning into how I felt? I'm not sure, but at least here I'm finding that, oh, do I need to eat or do I not need to eat? Has been working for me so far. So,
Yeah, and it's because it's becoming more intuitive to you. And that's essentially because when we go on keto too, it really does affect our hunger hormones. I know for me, when I was on it, I wasn't as hungry. So it was harder to see, okay, in terms of activity, I could go with less food, but I don't necessarily know if that was a good thing. So, whereas with this, it's more intuitive. I can see that I'm hungrier on those days, but I also have more energy on those days. And so I feel okay eating more carbohydrates because now I have that freedom to go between both of them. It's not where I was before, where I was restricting carbohydrates. So it was more a case of willpower to avoid them. And the other aspect of it is when we start to balance our blood sugar, which is something I've noticed over the last few weeks, is that the food noise starts to go away as well. And that was always a huge issue with carbohydrates and why a lot of people move over to keto to kind of help to quiet that food noise. But again, it's really addressing the blood sugar issue, and then the food noise starts to go away. An example of this is we just had Thanksgiving over here in Canada this past weekend. And I had a little wedding event to go to. We had gone to the Mandarin, which is a big buffet restaurant. And the restaurant I was really worried about because old me would go in there and just because I'm a huge foodie and I would just devour everything in sight. So leading up to it, I was actually getting nervous because I was like, okay, I've been feeling really great. I've been balancing my movement with my nutrition. My energy levels have been really great. I'm really kind of worried about going into this and seeing how it all plays out. But I was very pleasantly surprised to go in and I was completely fine. I went in, I grabbed, protein, I grabbed, vegetables, I had a little bit of carbs, I had some roasted potatoes, I had a little mini cheesecake and a little cookie, and that was it. But it wasn't
Amazing.
willpower. I didn't force myself to do that. It almost became natural. And I saw everybody else eating, the things that I normally would have wanted to eat, but it was almost as if I was not, I can't even explain it, but it was incredible. When I reflected on it when I got home, I was like, you know what? That was food noise. My blood sugar has addressed the food noise and it started to quiet down. So I was able to go in and eat, what I wanted to eat, but I didn't go crazy. I didn't eat to the point where I couldn't breathe because I was
Which
so
people
full.
do at buffets. That's the whole
Yes.
concept, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
It is. And when you have food noise because of blood sugar imbalances, it's like it's a smorgasbord. You're just going to go in there and you're going to eat everything in sight because that food noise is speaking. That's what's in control. But when I started to address that, the food noise really quieted down. And that was a perfect example because I could go in and I didn't feel deprived. I enjoyed the things that I wanted. I wanted a slice of cheesecake, so I had it, but I didn't go back for seconds or thirds because I didn't need to. And when we're on GLP-1s, that's a big thing that a lot of women say is that the food noise
Mm.
goes away, which is a huge, huge issue. But the beauty of it is that we can do it naturally as well. So this isn't to say if you're on medication, that you have to stop. This is something you need to speak with your doctor. This is a personal decision. But this is more speaking to the women who don't want to go on a medication or they don't want to go on a restrictive diet. We can achieve the same things naturally through our nutrition, through our movement, and through recovery. And the beauty of it is that it addresses so many things, right? It affects our thyroid production as well. It also affects our estrogen production because when we have high levels of insulin, it sends a signal to our ovaries and our fat cells to increase estrogen. So then we see even more fluid retention. So
Mm.
it's almost like the insulin, which is a hormone, sort of dictates indirectly to all of our other hormones, our stress hormones, our reproductive hormones, our energy hormones, like our thyroid, and everything sort of starts to be addressed and starts to function at a more optimal level. So it's really interesting because I'm really just in the early, stages of addressing the metabolic piece, but already I've started to see such an incredible shift in everything. And I'm thinking in my head, I really hope that doctors and researchers really start to get into this particular space.
Agreed.
Because I think, and again, right now, my goal is to try to educate as many women as I can on this, just through Instagram, through one-on-one support.
Mm.
I want to do a group coaching program as well that talks all about metabolic health because it's about educating. It's not just telling women, okay, do this, this, and this. It's
Yes.
about teaching them the mechanics. Because when you understand, it's like this little light bulb goes on and it's like, oh my, like this makes complete sense.
Mm.
This explains why this has been working or why this hasn't been working. And that motivates you because we want to stay consistent with it, right? Because lipedema, again, is the result of this environment in our bodies. So we want to choose movement that we love. We want to create a nutrition plan that we can sustain. And when we create this lifestyle, it's not we do it until we reach our end goal. It's we need to do this lifestyle for life.
Do you track your blood sugar and ketones at all?
No,
No, for
no.
any particular reason, or just that you don't want to get too dogmatic about that kind of thing?
I don't, and that's the thing too, with my work specifically, I don't want people to be so specific on every single number because, like I said, as holistic nutritionists, we look at the imbalances in the body and addressing that through, again, lifestyle habits. So we look at nutrition, we look at movement, we look at sleep, we look at stress, how these all connect and what we can do to start addressing it. And for me specifically, I look at how all of these impact lipedema, right? And so I don't want people to get too specific with numbers. Again, if you're using it and you want to use it as a tool, I say go ahead. We want to do things that make us feel comfortable. And if you want to track it on your own, but as a nutritionist, I don't specifically, will say to track it because you know you're making improvements by how you feel.
Mm,
I
you do.
shared an image recently of my legs. I think it was yesterday or the day
Yes,
before.
I saw that.
And the weight in the swollen legs was higher than in the one and I just was like, I was in shock because I thought, well, my weight really isn't going down. And we focus so much about the weight and even myself, because I'm a nutritionist, I talk about this, but I still have the exact same feelings that my clients go through. And when I step on the scale and I see the number stay or even go up a little bit, I'm like, you know, you go through the
Yeah,
emotions.
you do.
But I have to remind myself, I look in the mirror and I'm like, but look at your legs. They're not swollen. Look at your kneecaps. You can see them again. You
Yeah.
can see your ankle bone again. Something is happening. And that is all about fluid redistribution, right? That fluid now is going into the intracellular tissue versus the extracellular. And that's really what we want to do. And then eventually over time, if weight loss is a goal, we eventually start to tap into those to the fat tissue and we start to lose weight, right? So
So
it's just
going off that picture, sorry to interrupt.
yes. No, that's
Um,
okay.
I'm very keen to hear what is your regime that you've been following that has achieved that. Forget the weight on the scales, but that you have, slimmed your legs, you've had the fluid distribution change. What have you been following for you?
Okay, so essentially what we've been talking about. So I've been finding movement. So I found some YouTube videos that I love there's one video in particular, it's a 45-minute steady state cardio. The YouTube account is just Grow with Joe. That's
Oh,
her
I know that
handle.
one. Yep, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, it's just paired to music. So there's no talking. So there's a 45-minute one I love to do. So I use my fitness tracker. This thing really helps to show me if, I need more of a recovery day. But again, you start to become more intuitive just with how you feel. If you didn't get a great sleep, okay, maybe today is a day where I'm going to go for a 30-minute walk. I'm going to do Pilates because even though Pilates can be tough, it is a low impact exercise, so it doesn't increase our stress hormone. So it's a great workout to do on
How
recovery
does
days.
Pilates help with lipedema? Does it? Only
Yes.
because there's Ali and they're called soys. The streets here are called soys, SOI.
Yeah.
And the soy that I live in has got a Pilates studio in it. And I'm like, oh, my husband's saying you should check that out. So tell me what you know about Pilates and lipedema.
Okay, so I'm not a Pilates fitness instructor, so I'm not going to speak on the mechanics or anything like that. But Pilates is great for a couple of reasons. One, the slow, controlled movements and the breath that comes along with it. So we know that deep breathing supports lymphatic flow.
Mm.
And when we're doing these slow, controlled movements, the importance is on the breath. So when you go to a Pilates class, you want to breathe in when you're extending a muscle or extending, a limb, whatever it is, and then exhale as you're bringing it all back in. And it addresses the core, which is, again, we have groups of lymph nodes. We have ones that are right in the groin area. It helps to address your posture, so it takes the pressure off of those lymph nodes that are in the groin, so it can help with better lymph flow. It's incredible for fascia because it's stretching the muscle
Mm.
and it's working those small muscles in the body versus our larger muscles. And so it's incredibly beautiful because it can help with the tangled collagen fibers. It can help with the tangled fascia. It's incredible for the lymphatic system, and it's a great recovery workout. So for me right now, I've switched. Now what I'm doing is on my higher energy days, I focus on my steady state cardio. So I do 45 minutes, and then that's when I increase my nutrition. So my carbohydrates are higher that day. On my rest and recovery days, I focus on Pilates or stretching videos. Anything to help the fascia to get lymph to move more freely, because we're always still going to deal with a little bit of fluid spillover. So we really want to work on improving the lymphatic system and sort of anything that might be stagnant or stop that fluid from flowing, we want to address. And Pilates is incredibly beautiful at doing that. So it's one of
Awesome.
those workouts that I really recommend women to do. And it can also increase muscle, right? It's not in the same way that lifting weights does, but it still does. So it's great to do it in the beginning stages. And then you can start getting into lifting weights 1 or 2 times a week as
Yeah.
well.
So,
So
do you do all the other manual things like skin brushing, fascia blasting, all of that kind of thing? Do you add any of that to your regime?
right now, no. The only thing I do is dry brushing. So I don't
Okay.
use a massage gun. I have one, but I'm not very consistent with it. I will eventually, but right now my goal was really just to address blood sugar. So I really wanted to focus on my nutrition. I wanted to focus on pairing my movement depending on what my what my movement needs were, and then using my nutrition to fuel that, and then recovery. That's another huge one because if we're working out 5, 6 days a week and we're never giving our body time to actually rest, that's when our muscle fibers repair. That's when inflammation drops. And that's what gives us energy to take it to the max at our next workout. So, recovery is huge because if we're constantly working out, our stress hormones are going to be constantly elevated. We're going to see a lot of inflammation just from tearing the muscles through strength training. Cardio increases cortisol. Our body is never going to have a chance to reset. So we need to allow our bodies to do that. So those rest days are so crucial, but we can have active recovery days as well. We can still go for a walk because we still need to move our bodies. Our
Mm.
bodies are designed to move. And I think, unfortunately, when we look at 2025 versus the 1950s, it's very different. We are so much more sedentary. We can have our groceries delivered to us. We can have anything really
We
delivered to
can have
us.
anything delivered here in Bangkok. It's
Literally
insane. It is insane.
anything.
Yeah.
Versus in the 1950s, before all of that happened, you had to go to the shopping mall. You had to go to the grocery
Mm.
store. We were moving our bodies naturally because we didn't have the conveniences that we have
And you
today.
know what? We had the natural rest day on the Sundays. Everybody, it
Yes.
was a family day. It was everybody got together. Some went to church, all the things. Sunday was a natural rest day. On that note, so I'm doing a 30-day bike riding challenge at the moment, which
Yeah.
I'm filming. Should I be resting
Yes.
like once a week during that challenge? Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Just
Yeah.
occurred to me as you were talking there. I was like, oh, maybe every day is not what I'm supposed to be doing. Right.
Yeah, because again, when we're increasing our heart rate, so those cardio exercises, that's what increases those stress hormones. So if you're doing that every single day, then you can definitely start to see some inflammation, even possibly some swelling. you want to give your body a little bit of a break because that's also what leads to burnout. Because it's something that
Mm.
you just can't sustain because eventually your body is going to become tired. And you might even notice, and that's what I noticed with strength training at the gym, was I was doing it every day, but I was so exhausted when I came home. I thought, isn't energy supposed to give us energy? Yet I'm coming home and I could take a 3 hour nap because that's how tired I was, because I never gave my nervous system a chance to relax, to get back to baseline. I was always in fight or flight, and that was what was really draining my energy. So if we want to be able to sustain that movement, we really need to put in those recovery days. It's so important.
How
We
often is a recovery day from your perspective?
So it really depends. You really have to go with how you feel. If you're noticing more swelling, if you're feeling more anxious, if you're tired throughout the day, those are signs that, okay, I need a rest day where I'm not doing any kind of workout. Maybe I go for a little walk. Maybe I do some stretching. Maybe I use a foam roller and gently massage my muscles. Just right. That's what you want to do.
Mm.
When you're feeling like you have a little bit of energy, but you're not ready to do a cardio workout, maybe you're just doing a Pilates workout, those are still recovery days. It's just considered an active recovery day because Pilates doesn't increase those stress hormones. So that's the beauty of Pilates. Pilates can actually be a workout that you could do every day. I wouldn't, only because you're so sore after Pilates, especially when you haven't done it in a while. Every tiny little muscle, you start to
I was
learn that
early
you
on the Pilates till you said that.
everywhere. Right? But it is essentially a workout you could do every day. But again, I just like to give I think with lipedema especially, we really just it's about balance, right? We go hard, then we relax,
We
then
have
we
to be
go hard.
kind to our bodies. Yeah.
We really
Yeah.
have to, yeah, you have to find that balance. It's not, again, if we're only sedentary and we're only working out, it's one extreme over the other. And that is going to contribute to problems. So we want to balance both of them out.
Holly,
I know
blowing my mind, blowing
it's
my
a lot.
mind. No, it's
It's
a lot, but it's very simple. It comes down to keeping your blood glucose
That's it.
steady and moving enough to counteract what is in the blood, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of
It's
that.
complex when we look at it from a scientific perspective, and that's the thing. A lot of the research, we see the research paper, but a lot of us, most of us, even myself included, I have to go through it slowly and sort of pick it
Mm,
apart. It's not easy for all of us to understand. And so for me, my goal was really just to simplify it and make it accessible for women and show that A, we can incorporate carbs if you want to. I love my carbohydrates. Okay. So I just could never sustain keto. I want to incorporate them, but how can I do it and support lipedema? And like I said, it's essentially the environment that leads to the result of lipedema. And we have so much control on that environment than we think that we do. And so the beautiful thing is when we look at blood sugar, it not only addresses those imbalances, but it also addresses thyroid imbalances, hormonal imbalances. And it's like our energy starts to increase. We sleep better. Our mood is better. The food noise starts to go away. We're eating carbs and we're looking at our bodies and we're thinking, well, where the heck is the swelling? I'm eating
yeah.
carbs every single day, yet the swelling is starting to go away. So it's this beautiful dance between all of it. And again, the more consistent we stay, the better everything gets. It
Oh,
continues to improve. That's the beautiful thing. So that
I've always said
if
it's never the big thing that we do. It's never
no,
the retreat. I went to on a 4 week Ayurvedic retreat in India in 2018. It's never that. It's always the little things that you do every day that
yeah,
compounds and makes the difference, right, with our health.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
it's in like I say to people all the time, just don't dive for the big things. Like, what can you do every day? And that's the way I'm trying to navigate it for myself as well. And it sounds like that's the way you're navigating your life,
yeah.
which is really amazing. So, if there is one parting thing you would like to say to lipedema women that are watching this, what would it be?
The biggest thing is honestly just be gentle with yourself. Okay. And I know this has been said so many times, but we are incredibly hard on ourselves. We are incredibly hard on our body. It's not about the next big thing that we can do to address this. Metabolic health, I think, is going to be one of the biggest things that we can do that's really going to impact all of it. And so, but it's small little things that we do every single day, and we stay consistent with those things that is going to make the biggest difference possible. But be easy on yourself as you go through the process, because we look at ourselves, we're so hard on our appearance, we're so hard on our symptoms and how we feel, and it takes such a huge mental hit. And so if I could look at myself back in 2019, I would literally just tell myself, it is honestly going to be okay. You don't have to worry about all these things. There are answers, there are things that you can do. You can create a balanced lifestyle that feels normal, that gives you a sense of normalcy. Like you don't have this condition. And that's what I want to bring to women. That's what I want to empower them with, that we have so much more control, and it isn't about this one magic, like, try not to search for that quick fix. Our
Mm,
bodies are capable of change. They really are. We just have to create the right environment to give it to them.
I love that. For anybody watching, I'm going to put all of Holly's links and things that you need to find her in the description box below. Holly, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
I had an absolute blast. I could talk about this stuff for hours. And I do want to mention too that actually this Friday, I am going to be releasing a guidebook that's actually going to be addressing all of this. So it's going to be talking about
Amazing.
nutrition, movement, recovery, the mechanics, so that women can start implementing this stuff right away, because it really does make such an incredible change. And I think it's a really important piece in the lipedema field right
Absolutely. The link for that will be in there too. So check it
now.
all out. So, Holly, thank you. And I hopefully will talk to you again on this channel soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Kylie.
Bye.
Bye.